Hello, everyone, and welcome to the final week of the Metagame Book Club in November. So we're here looking at Track 2, and we're calling this week Hero's Journey. As always, I'm Chris. Hello. And obviously I'm here reporting from some cold, snowy space. So maybe it's Frostfire Ridge, which we'll talk a little bit about. With me today, we have a few people with us. So we have a few guest speakers, so we'll get to them really quickly. I also want to thank, as always, our helping hands of ISTE's Gaming Simulations Network, as well as Inevitable Betrayal Guild, for helping us out and getting everything together. So today we have myself, and we also have Kay, Trish, Tanya, Christina, and we have two special guests with us today, Jane and Leanne. So everyone will be jumping in as they have comments, and we'll continue on with our presentation. So again, this is for the November Book Club. If you're just tuning in, we've been going at it since November 1st, so we're wrapping up on the 23rd, but feel free to check things out. We are archiving all of the presentations as well as you can see the week's information there as well. So first I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Kay, talk about the power of myth.
Okay, everybody. What we read this week in The Power of Myth was we looked at the Chapter 4, Sacrifice and Bliss, Chapter 8, Massive Eternity, and Chapter 5, we went back and we looked at the hero's adventure. Now, when it comes to this, if you can go next slide, okay, Joseph Campbell, and what he calls this pattern that you constantly see about heroes is he calls this monomyth. And any of the guest speakers who'd like to jump in and if you've studied this or have anything else to add, please do so, because I'm just going to go over it briefly. So Joseph Campbell actually got the term monomyth from James Joyce in Finnegan's Wake, and the idea is that there is a pattern for the hero's journey. And this is just a straight quote from one of Joseph Campbell's writings. The basic story of the hero's journey involves giving up where you are, going into the realm of adventure, coming to some kind of symbolically rendered realization, and then returning to the field of normal life. And this is an abbreviated version. If you just Google the hero's journey, you will find different variations of this. And this pattern, some people extended it. I saw some extensions out to like 15 and 16. So I just went with the basics. So the basics here for hero's journey are you get the call to adventure. So there's something that goes ahead and it happens that someone is trying to get you out of your comfort zone. And in games, we see this a lot. And I'm just pulling up my screen right now. Now, we've been talking to you about World of Warcraft and how there was a new experience. Well, when it comes to this is you just happen to be seeing one of my characters that I play, and they are on their way to meet the Frostwolf clan, and that is straight out of the book, Rise of the Horde, and the whole lore when it comes to basically when it comes to World of Warcraft. And oh, you just saw somebody just leaped over me. But what this is the start of the adventure. This is when you're being called to help Durotan. So you meet him on the road here, and then you're called to go on the adventure, to help him quest, and to help fight against the Iron Horde. So the reason we're really bringing it up in games, this hero's journey, is we put this out in discussions, and we want you to think about this. Could you give an assignment to your students for them to go into their favorite game and see if the hero's journey is there? Now, in an anthropology class at my college, we did ask our students to go and look for the archetypes, and to see what was showing up in the games they play. And we really saw Joseph Campbell's monomyth. And again, a lot of these games that we're playing, these MMOs, are influenced by a Western version and Joseph Campbell's theory of narrative. So, but I just wanted to ask you guys, and for our panelists, do you think we could go ahead and give an assignment about having our students go into their favorite games and then looking at it and seeing if they can find this and writing about it? And anybody jump in if you feel like it.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I've done some work with the starting zones in WoW to see how that works. I mean, I think you could just take a starting zone for students who didn't have a game of their own, and they would go. I mean, in their own life, they would go from the everyday into a different kind of realm where the hero's journey is. That answer the call.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'd go through the different trials, and depending on the starting zone, it's the boon. You could interpret that in a number of ways, but
Mm-hmm.
one is you're a hero at the end of that, in some way. But I was thinking as I was reading this that dungeons and raids are like, I mean, within the game itself, you're starting in your everyday world of, say, your garrison. And then suddenly, you've been called to a raid, and you're in, what he calls the belly of the well. You've got some real trials and things you got to go through, right? And it's over, and you click, and you're back in the ordinary world. You come out with your loot, or whatever.
Oh, that is a fantastic idea. And for those of you who aren't familiar with raids and dungeons are, you go into a 5-person group and you have to battle specific monsters, and you get a prize, loot, or a boon at the end of it, and then you can just go back to like kind of what I'm showing on my screen now, where you're just kind of on the road and nothing's really threatening you at the moment, and you can just.
Yeah.
And you're right. It is like when it comes to the MMOs, they are setting up for like these mini hero's journey. And I also love your idea of the starting area, that students who aren't necessarily playing now could jump into one of the that are free to play.
Right. That was the idea. What could they do that's free, that's an MMO that engages them in fantasy, nothing, really freaky.
Yeah.
Why are you calling us freaky?
Freaky to me, or first-person shooter, realistic.
Okay.
Those are kind of freaky to me.
I definitely think that there is a strong storyline. I think the WoW in Schools program definitely pulls out that idea of the hero's journey and how we can use that to understand our work within these games.
Because the game that I know most of my kids are playing is Minecraft.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to think about, in some ways going into the survival mode of Minecraft, as an adventure. You're not called to it, and you shape it, and you decide what trials you're going to face. But it'd be interesting to ask kids to create a, to use Minecraft to tell that story themselves, because it is such a sandbox, and you can do what you like in it.
Oh yeah.
If you could do it that way.
Well, speaking from Minecraft too, though, there's the whole idea of going through the portal to the end to slay the Ender Dragon and to battle the things that are in the end or in the Nether. But speaking as a first-person shooter, I know that my daughter, who is the FPS player in my house,
Mm-hmm.
she really loves the hero's journey of Skyrim, because that is because it is very much of a choose your path. Depending upon the race that you are, you choose your path, and there's times that you get into trouble even when you're not meaning to get into trouble. And the whole idea of becoming dragonborn and slaying dragons and then doing everything, and that has really enthralled her. Her goal in life right now is to build her own computer so she can do mods on Skyrim because of just how much she loves that story.
Huh. Well, and within Minecraft, which I agree does not have quite the narrative line or possibility about do, what I see a lot of kids doing is recreating elements of the stories that they're drawn to. And so it's providing them an opportunity to kind of reenact the other narratives that they've read.
You know, I kind of like the idea that, I mean, the hero can be interpreted and the point of view. I think that would be kind of a cool parallel, like the whole idea of depends on what side you're on. And like in the game of World of Warcraft, whether they choose the Alliance side or the Horde side and how they're perceived, but there are heroes on both sides. I think that's probably kind of an interesting thing to look at. You know, when we teach history, it's the bad guys and the good guys. Of course, we're the good guys. But depending on, you know, what side you're looking at, maybe the other guy's the bad guy, you know, and it's just kind of a cool thing to do in terms of who the hero really is, you know, the hero, the person whose side you're on.
Yeah, Grit, I found that really interesting too when Campbell was talking about, you know, Hitler's people being, yeah, and maybe that's what you're referring to, being a hero to, you know, that group when they did things that furthered their cause.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to thinking about the book we were reading, like Gul'dan, near the end where he decides to go to Azeroth in World of Warcraft. Is you know, choosing for self-interested reasons, but you know, I wondered if he was a hero in a way. He was saving them from starvation.
And what we have up here on Chris's screen, Chris saved one of his characters who has not gone into Draenor yet. So he's gonna, what he's gonna do, I'm gonna get off mic and I'm gonna let him talk through actually going into this, because again, can't you see how this could help if you were teaching this in a humanities class, in a literature class, in a language arts class, how even an MMO or a game would be able to would allow you to help explain this. So Chris, take it away.
Sure. So here I have a tune that is in an older area of World of Warcraft, the past expansion pack, Mists of Pandaria. And so what happens is you immediately get this call to arms or call to adventure. New in Warlords of Draenor, garrisons, new character models. You know, head to the Dark Portal and talk to Archmage Khadgar. Start quests now. And so it really gives you your attention. You really can't see anything else. You know, even if I try to open something else up behind it, it's hidden. So I have to go ahead. There's really no avoiding accepting this quest. So you go ahead, you have to accept it. You get the Dark Portal, Attention Heroes, you will accept it. And now comes the hard part because I have to run back to find Khadgar and see where he's at. And so now comes my journey. So before you even start the adventure, I have to go down the road and back again. So
Looks pretty deserted over there, doesn't it?
Sure does.
it is. This used to be very, very popular, and now it is a desolate, desolate location. So, and you guys can talk about some of your experiences, because it's going to be a little bit as I travel to the next spot.
One of the things that I wanted to mention when we talked about perspectives and the use of the hero's journey or the concept of hero, with MMOs and other media that kids are using, this is something we see a lot in the fan fiction that kids write. And they often play with who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, or combining characters from different narrative streams. And if we can, I mean, so far, much of fan fiction has been for people that love writing, but you're seeing more Minecraft writing in it now, and some video games. I think this is a real logical place to help bridge that gap between the avid gamers who don't buy into a lot of school tasks and their gameplay with more academic work.
I think what's interesting too is the medium is you're engaged, you're immersed, but the sound effects, and I think it's probably kind of subliminal. But when I first started playing World of Warcraft, I kind of felt like, wow, I'm in a movie. Like, I'm the hero. When you hear
exactly.
those sounds and you don't even really think about it, but here I am, and those sounds are for me, and I'm the hero because I just achieved something. That's a feeling, and it's such a difficult thing to teach feeling. So when you're teaching literature, you're teaching about stories, and you're asking kids those questions, and how do you think this character felt? And it might be kind of a neat way to parallel it with, how did you feel when you accomplished such and so? Maybe that's a little bit like how this hero in story ABC felt, just to...
Oh, I agree entirely. And in fact, I don't know, I'll ask the rest of the group. Has anyone been waking up with the audio track of Warlords running through your mind as you wake up?
Yeah, it just comes to me sometimes.
It's like this earworm I can't get rid of.
No, but I do have to say, running in something like a dungeon or a raid where you're trying to accomplish that is a different feeling about you having to do something, physically on the keyboard with the mouse, and figuring out how to slay the dragon. There's a different feeling about that versus reading about someone slaying the dragon.
I've been noticing since the expansion, and I'm doing more questing again, that I really noticed the little fanfare every time you complete a quest. Going back to what Tanya was saying, and just I really like that, the little dun da da, every time I complete something. We need that in the classroom.
Yeah, I like the yellow glowing light.
Yeah.
And it is really feedback. I mean, it's that kind of immediate feedback that you're knowing that you succeeded or failed. And I happen to have a grid screen up, and I was hoping that she had somebody who she could show how with her followers she even gets sheets on whether she sent them out on a mission, did they succeed or fail, and she gets she finds out whether they succeeded or failed.
Yeah, here's my my followers. I have a whole bunch of them out on a mission right now, and you do. I mean, these are NPCs. These are non-player characters, but they're part of my troop. And I'm a little cautious. I do not send them out on missions. When I look at my missions and I see that a mission is, say, below 70%, I don't really want them to fail. So here's my
level up either way. I mean, they get some credit.
We have had.
Go ahead.
That's funny. I'm with Grid. I like to make sure they're going to succeed.
I like to make sure they're all out doing something.
Okay.
That's funny. I always make sure it's at least 75% because it seems like that seems to be the tipping point that I notice. It's funny.
Okay, so we have Chris, and he's now about to get his quest. and he's even traveling just to get the quest. So we'll let him drive for a little bit on screen.
Yeah, like I said before, you're really not allowed to refuse the call. You can do it if you want. You can ignore it for a while, but eventually you have to answer the call. So here we go. He goes ahead and tells us, the numbers are evading our briefly. This may be our chance to strike. So for Azeroth. So here we go. And so there's dialogue here that unfortunately you guys can't hear it. There's a really cool soundtrack. Guys with big hammers, can't fault that. Fun animation. Kick the guy back through the portal. They're like, yeah, we made it. Uh-oh. Now, if that's not heroic, I don't know what is. And then it kicks back on where you are now in the new Warlords of Draenor, and you're back to questing. And you can see there's all sorts of fights breaking out around you. You have additional quests to turn in. They give you experience, and then they give you new quests to go ahead and do. And you have lots of other things. So you can see, lots of things going on. See cannons back in the background, lots of people running around, and so this is your intro to the new expansion, Warlords of Draenor. So very fun group, and behind you is the portal, and there's really no going back.
Yeah, that's the portal they built at the end of Rise of the Horde.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
This is the portal that they built at the very end near the end of the book. Yep.
Or something like that. I mean, they don't go... Well, anyway, I guess it was like that.
And, well, for anyone who wants to read the next book kind of in this little series, The Last Guardian is about Khadgar, who Chris is right there questing with, who brought him through the portal. But Khadgar is the apprentice to Medivh, who's the one who told the orcs that they should make the portal.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually, to Lois's question, it actually is. They actually wrote the description of the portal because I believe that the dark portal, existed in game prior to the writing of the book.
Yeah.
And they actually do describe exactly this portal. So you have the two guardians on either side that are cowled. You have the serpent with too many teeth, leering over the top. You see right up there. So they did recreate that image in the book as well. So they kept the images very, very similar to what's there.
Yeah.
So did the story and did the game develop at the same time? I'm asking because I'm.
No, the game came before the book.
But but did the story exist, or does the story? The story just kind of evolve as the game evolves. And I can't help but think of, when Charles Dickens was writing, and gosh, the literature professors around here can probably, but when Charles Dickens started writing, as I recall, he didn't write like, the same as the Count of Monte Cristo was written in the same way. It was written in little chapters. And it was when people were beginning to read, because of course prior to that people weren't, or the invention of the printing press, and so they were getting people to read, and they got them to read these little chapters rather than giving them an entire book, and each chapter sort of had a cliffhanger. And I'm wondering if it's kind of the same thing. They develop the game, they develop a story, and then the next expedition.
I think it's kind of along the same lines as the Star Wars. Is that it was an idea, and then either it began as fan fiction or as just something to go along aside. The stories were created, and from what I've understood from just the reading I've done, is that the game was created and then just to further elaborate. But I think it's become a very symbiotic kind of relationship at this point, to where the story feeds the game feeds the story, and the authors just kind of keep working back and forth, and it kind of fleshes out the game, and then the game comes in and fleshes out more story. And it's just as Star Wars has now, the whole expanded universe of Star Wars is kind of where the new Star Wars movies are going, which, you know, there's 60, 70, 80 Star Wars books out there now that are far beyond the 6 movies that are out there.
Yeah.
My impression
Yeah,
is that the narrative is so important in the game that Blizzard would have an idea of the narrative, even if it's not written out in book form. And I was thinking about, some of us have read Reamd by Neil Stevenson, which features a man who is in charge of a gigantic MMO game. And he definitely had writers who were writing the story, and that was a very important part of the development of the game. And I kind of made the assumption that was a dynamic that happened in real life.
I think that's Chris Hudson, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. What happened with Blizz is they do have their chief storyteller, which is Chris.
Yeah.
And basically, he is in charge of maintaining the canon, if you will, of the game. And so what happened is the game was out. The game started getting really, really popular in the fan sites and the, basically the fan sites and the game site itself wasn't a sufficient enough resource for enough of the backstory. So then what happened with Blizz is I believe they vetted a bunch of different writers, and there are certain writers that they allow to write for them, to write the World of Warcraft books. And those writers have access to Chris and the other people in his department, and they basically learn, they basically hear about what's going on in World of Warcraft. They learn what the intention was, what the motivation was of the different characters, and then of course, there is some fleshing out that there's some creativity, some creative license that the authors exert, but they do go in and they are running their script, running the manuscripts past Blizzard, so they're approving the scripts. Now it's getting to the point now where it's probably getting to the point where the fiction side of the Blizz, armada of merchandising is starting to outpace the game itself, and so it's probably going to get into the piece where we're just going to start seeing more and more people writing about World of Warcraft. But I know that since they're using the World of Warcraft logos on all the books, they have to get Blizz's blessing.
Right. And the book that Rise of the Horde was, I just checked, is 2006.
Yeah.
So it's been out a while.
I really, one of the and then playing the new expansion has really gotten me thinking about what is this creative process that Blizzard is using. And I think as somebody that, works closely with people who teach writing methods courses, that I just think this is a fascinating.
I think one of the funniest things I heard was I watched the documentary they did, and Chris Metzen is kind of talking about how all these ideas came upon and how things were fleshed out and how the continents got their shapes and all this kind of thing. And then he talks about when they did Chasm, and he said he gave them the story for Cataclysm, and they looked at him and they said, "You broke the world." And that just struck me as so funny when I was watching that, because it was just like they were all just flabbergasted that they had spent all this time building this lush landscape of Thousand Needles, et cetera, and he just comes in and he breaks the world. And it was just in his way of describing how, but we move on from that and the journey continues, and that kind of thing.
So the thing about it is, I don't know, and because I've been reading up on this a little bit, but Tolkien actually called this like sub-creation. like when Tolkien came up with his whole universe for The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings, he called this sub-creation because he said, creation was for God, but sub-creation is something an author can do. And I think, Leanne, that you're really onto something because now when it comes to entertainment and our students who might want to go and write for entertainment, if they're writing for games, they will be working with a whole, a taxonomy. They will have to be thinking about lore. They'll have to be thinking about how the whole world or this sub-universe was made. And I think that that's really an exceptional thing for us to start thinking about how we could teach something like that. Because could you see a writing, a literature class, an English class, any class you would like to take to do this, but have them go over a certain period of time, whether a semester or a quarter or something like that, and create the lore of the world. And how much fun and how interesting that could be, as a teacher and a student.
I think you would have conversations too about, like on tonight's theme, what is a hero? And one of the things I've been thinking about was, okay, the character Draka, Durotan's, wife, and there at the end she is, she charges in when he's being attacked by all these people when he yells out that he doesn't want the little Draenei boy sacrificed, and she charges in to help him. And that was a heroic act for her to do that because she wasn't thinking about herself or her own well-being. She was thinking about him and maybe the boy as well. So that was a heroic act. But is she a hero? What is a hero? There's all kinds of heroic acts. But those kinds of questions. So you create this world and you want heroes in it. Mm-hmm. Well, what are you really wanting there? What are you just want a bunch of people who do heroic acts but aren't really like going for some greater purpose?
Well, exactly, and I think that's a great topic to table until we get to the is Durotan a hero part of the discussion tonight.
Okay.
We will be doing that. But one last thing I wanted to show is that this is how much the book actually is with the game. Is that they actually, when they describe the summoning of the minions by the warlock, remember the purple cube that forms above the head?
There you go. Okay.
Whenever they summon, so they did do a really good job of staying true to the game as far as even this minor detail. So they wrote it very much towards the game.
Well, or this is the expansion, so they can be working from the book.
Oh no, that purple cube's always been there from.
Okay.
The time we got warlocks. So.
Oh well, that's noob problem here.
Okay, so we have a certain amount of time because we have somebody who's going to be doing a hangout on virtual ethnography that we want to get to. So we're gonna go ahead and continue on.
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and go through the Rise of the Horde. So we're gonna do our normal characters and then special events, and we'll get to our discussion. So this reading is a recap of chapters 14 through the prologue. So the main characters we have is Kil'jaeden. He comes back. He reveals himself to the Horde. He actually summons Manroth, and he actually shows up on Draenor and supervises the attack of Shattrath. And then once they're done attacking Shattrath, he's like, well, I don't know if all of them are dead or not, but I really should get back to the business. Otherwise, the boss might miss me. So he headed back to the office and took Manroth with him and left the orcs alone. So it was kind of like anticlimactic. You didn't really see Kil'jaeden get attacked. You didn't really see him get involved a whole lot other than his manipulation thing. And he sort of was like, well, we made a good go of it. Go team. And then he just sort of disappeared. And I was like, well, I don't need you anymore. Manaroth is very important to the lore of the Orcs. He's basically Archimonde's second in command. Remember, Archimond was the leader of the Burning Legion, so he commanded all the forces. And Manaroth is his second in command. He is a pit lord, so that's why he's got that really funky look to himself. And one of the interesting things about it is he gives the green blood that the Orcs drink to give them their bloodlust. So there is a lot of contention about whether the Orcs are really Kil'jaeden's instruments or are they Manaroth's instruments. Valen realizes that really there's no stopping the coming war. We talked about the tipping point during week 2, but really what happens here is he realizes that the momentum just keeps pushing and pushing and pushing, and there really is no way to stop the coming war. What's interesting enough is he does consider Durotan to be one of the most egregious violators and the egregious killers of Draenei because of his actions at Telemorr. So he does call him the betrayer in the actual piece itself. So the other thing we have there is that Valen does live to fight again, and that's one of the interesting things about the Draenei is that they had to make sure that people thought, the Orcs thought they killed all the Draenei. So I mean that's a huge, huge discussion there as the level of sacrifice that the Draenei were willing to do to save the few Draenei that survived Shattrath. Durotan is forced to sack Telemorr. Really, it was either you kill them or we will kill you and your clan. Same aspect happened with Shattrath. He does forbid his clan to drink, though, and he does sort of represent the traditional values. He's very much about we should go back to our roots. We should follow the old ways. This is wrong. We need to go back to the way things were. And so he really sort of becomes is becoming and continues to become a pain in Gul'dan's side. Orgrim is still suspicious, but he continues to follow orders like a good soldier. He does sneakily give Durotan advice, so he does go ahead and have people drop off missives to keep Durotan aware of things and to give Durotan sort of an idea of what's going on behind the scenes and alerting him to threats and things like that. At the end of the book, he also agrees to go, well, next time I come visit, I'll make sure that we bring some sacks of food to make sure that you guys have enough food to survive the winter. What's interesting with Orgrim is that he does not drink the blood, but unlike Durotan, he basically is able to pass it off as, oh, no, mighty Black Hand, I am not worthy of consuming the drink that you have been honored with. So he really, really downplays it and says that he's just not worthy of the honor of drinking from the horn, which goes over really well because Black Hand loves flattery. Ner'zhul does find a way to fight back. He was one of those ones where he was a puppet. He really wasn't there. Ner'zhul is the one that sends a message, a warning to Durotan not to drink and tells him what's going to happen. And that's one of the reasons why Durotan forbids his entire clan from drinking. Gul'dan, he's now the boss. He does fail at capturing Valen, but he's not worried about consequences because Kil'jaeden was like, hey, nice knowing you, bye. Very much so long and thanks for all the fish. And he just took off. And so what happened was interesting is that when Kil'jaeden left, and with the smashing of the Draenei, guess what? There's no one. There's all these orcs with all this bloodlust, and there's no one for them to fight. So that's one of the things where they sort of dealing with this despair, because now we have these maddened orcs that are raring for somebody to attack and fight with, and there's nobody there to fight with other than each other. And near the end of the book, he actually gets approached by Medivh to build the Dark Portal that would link Draenor with Azeroth. Black Hand, he is still serving as war chief on the Shadow Council. He's really sort of solidified himself at this point in time, and he continues to lead the Horde throughout the rest of the book. Medivh is a character we just get to know at the end of the book, and he's actually a very key figure in the lore of World of Warcraft. He is the last Guardian prior to Khadgar taking over that title. His mother actually fought Sargeras during the first war, because actually the orcs coming to Azeroth is considered the second war of Azeroth. The first war was actually the Burning Legion coming to Azeroth, and Medivh's mother was key in defeating Sargeras, at least she thought she was. But actually what happened is Sargeras sacrificed his body, invaded her with his spirit, and whenever she decided to get pregnant about 800 years later, that he then possessed Medivh, which was his son. And he's a very tragic figure in World of Warcraft lore. Very powerful, but very tragic figure, as the Guardian that he has in him is fighting with the evil of Sargeras the entire time. So the important events. There was lots of war. Massacre at Telemore. There's really no way to describe what happened at Telemore other than being massacred. Majority of the people who were killed in Telemore were civilians that were not fight back. They were killing men, women, children. It really didn't matter. They killed every single Draenei that was there. If you were blue, basically you were dead. And then there's a sacking of Shattrath itself, along with the horrors of the Burning Legion that were called forth as well. They also were involved in the sacking of Shattrath. And then there's that really key part there, that there was a lot of Draenei who could have escaped. They could have left. They could have avoided this. They could have gotten rid of it. But a lot of them decided, look, if they kill enough of us, they'll think they've killed all of us, and it'll give everyone else who flees a chance to stay alive and to survive. And so you have that, really, really heroic sacrifice by the defenders of Shattrath. And it was from all castes of Draenei society. You had servants who picked up arms to give the orcs a feeling that they really were killing everybody in the city itself. The other thing that happens is the changing in orcish architecture. Remember before they talked about how it was always they were nomadic tribes. They moved back and forth. Now they built the Citadel, which becomes the Hellfire Citadel. And it was first noted by Durotar that it seems like spikes and horns and sharp edges seem to be now the architecture du jour of the orcish architecture from now on. Basically, the other thing about Hellfire Citadel was it was the first time that Black Hand required all orcs to leave their clan land, their homelands, and come to the Citadel. Everyone who was able to fight had to come to the Citadel. So you see that as well. It is now definitely the land of the warlocks. Shamanism is actually outlawed in the last part of the book. People who are practicing shamanism are persecuted. It's one of those things that's really trying to stamp out all vestiges of shamanism. Again, warlocks need to gain strength and acceptance because they're the only ones that can call forth magical powers. The shamanism, we just talked about that, is now practiced in secret. Some can heal, but they can only do it with herbs and salves, whereas before they were able to call upon the elements to heal people from serious wounds. So, I mean, that's something else you have to think about, how a major change for the orcs. They used to be able to be healed from major wounds, and now you actually are very much mortal. You're very much where you're looking at, well, you could definitely die from your wounds now, as opposed to you might have survived it before. The other big thing is orcs and ogres. Oh my! The orcs have allied themselves with their ancient enemy, the ogres. And how do they do that? Well, they join with the ogres to go kill the Grons. So if you've never seen a Gron before, the guy down here at the bottom is the Gron. At the bottom of this slide here. Big bad guy. The ogres are up on top. And basically the ogres and the orcs joined together and basically dominated the Grons from there forward. So they formed their alliance there. They've always been an enemy, so that's a huge change in there. In Draenor itself, due to the presence of the warlocks, it's hinted at the land was dying, its resources being drawn away and withering. The water dries up, the land begins to die, the land turns to dust. You really read that at the end. You're starting to get the idea of how desperate situation the orcs actually are in now. They've smashed their enemy, the Draenei. They did everything to make sure they killed the Draenei, and now what's happening is they're now reaping the repercussions of doing that, which is now their planet is dying, and that's one of the other reasons why the Dark Portal. The orcs have to go through the Dark Portal. They know that their land is dying. They are very, very aware of that. You also have the greening of the orcs. In the beginning of the books, they start talking about how the orcs are red and browns. They're reds and browns and various variations of that. And then by the end of the book, you start seeing, skins flaking off, and there's green skin underneath it. Those that drink the blood turn a very, very vivid green with blood red eyes. And so that's what you see there is based on the corruption that gradually starts seeping into every single orc that's out there as they start to green. And then you have the orc clans start turning each other. So after the Draenei die, at least as far as the orcs feel that way, and there's no longer a concentrated area of enemies to fight. Basically, you need to fight somebody. Remember, they're all tainted with demonic bloodlust. They're like kill, kill, kill. Well, there's no one to kill anymore. So a lot of the blame falls to the Frostwolves for failures because they blame that Kil'jaeden left because the orcs failed, and they blamed it on the Frostwolves because they didn't drink as a clan. So because the clans weren't united, that's the reason why Kil'jaeden left. And also just because they need someone to fight. And obviously based on what we've read in the book, that guess what? If the majority of the population is green, and you're the only red or brown orc, guess what? You stand out. It's pretty easy to obviously see, hey, you're different. And lastly, at the end, there's the Dark Portal. And the Dark Portal does offer a hope. It offers a new adventure. It offers new enemies, probably more importantly for the orcs in their maddened state right now, is that, hey, look, there's more enemies to crush. There's more blood to spill. There's more out there for me to attack and go after. So that Dark Portal is a source of hope and a source of a focus for them. And then you have the start of the Second War of Azeroth. So that's really where the book wraps up. Is the orcs begin to pour into Azeroth. Durotan goes in after the sacrifice of the Dranic boy, and then what's not said right there is that pretty soon they'll meet up with the Alliance, and things will quickly precipitate into the Second War of Azeroth. The other thing that is talked about a little bit is that right after the end, very shortly after the Frostwolf, Durotan and Dreka go through the portal into the new world of Azeroth, their entire clan is exiled from the Horde. And so that is why you get Alterac Valley. And that is why, if you notice at Alterac Valley, if you play the game, the reputation you build there is with the Frostwolf clan. So, and this is their compound in Azeroth in Alterac Valley. And actually, the person in charge here is Drekthar, which is a very, very key figure here in this book. You hear a lot about Drekthar in this book. So he is actually the leader left there at Alterac Valley. And at the very, very last thing that happened is Thrall was like, okay, phew, we got done with the story of it. We don't have to worry about it. Now we know the source of it. So we're starting to be peaceful, and we're starting to figure things out now. And guess what happens? He gets word from his spies that Valen and the Draenei have crash landed again on Azeroth. and so basically now the biggest enemy the orcs ever had, is now there. So they've re-arrived on Azeroth. It's one of those things of all the planets and all the galaxies, you had to crash land on mine. If Thrall was going to go ahead and channel Rick. So there's these different things that you deal with here that they come through.
Chris, one of the things that I saw that was it just sort of confirmed Durotan's, I guess it would be his role, is that when they were getting ready to attack Shattrath and Kil'jaeden appeared before them all,
Mhm.
Durotan recognized him for what he was,
Yep.
and he recognized him to be a Draenei or an Eridar, and he said to himself, "This is all we have been used all in a personal battle between two people or two beings," because he could see that that Kil'jaeden was having them kill his own people.
Mhm.
And so that struck me, is that Durotan knew that, but he knew that he had to go ahead and do the things that he had to do in order to protect his people.
Well,
And
exactly. Yeah.
and it's just there's this constant movement of, you're kind of going, the Draenei are this tragic people, but at the same time you have tragedy happening on the other side too, because you know that the nobleness, or whatever vestiges of nobleness were left within the Frostwolves, is not going to be allowed to continue, because Gul'dan will not allow that, because he's afraid, because he knows that Durotan knows something, and he's afraid because that leaves the possibility that power could be taken away. And I don't know, I think that the biggest drug that everyone became an addict of in this book is power. Whether it's Kil'jaeden, Sargeras, Gul'dan's, Ner'zhul, they're just all power addicts.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also interesting, and of course I'm going to lose his name, but the shaman that Gorlog replaced,
Ner'zhul, yeah.
Ner'zhul, thank you. He had senses of this early on, and liked the power too much to give it up. And
Well, exactly. I mean, there's lots of instances in the book where Ner'zhul is reflecting, going, he looks so much like a Draenei. You know, that, you know, the tail, the bill, you know, other than his coloration, he looks so much like a Draenei. I mean, he keeps going over his head. You know, it's one of those things, like, it's like he's beating his head against a wall. He's like, well, you look just like them. You know.
yeah, and then I was also interested in, man, I should have written these names down. Drak'Thor, the
Drak'Thar, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the shaman.
I mean, he didn't catch on to this at all, and I think when we come back in the last book, right before the Warlords release, he's, you know, beaten, he's old, he has lots of regrets, and I just found it really interesting to see that backstory for him, how he really had been duped.
And that's the interesting thing with reading this book right when we did, right with the expansion. It really gave me a different feeling for playing the game, because now in playing World of Warcraft, we've been put at, say, like, more towards the beginning of the book that we just read, Rise of the Horde, and we know that it can go ahead and be different. And just, you know, and just the little things, like the first ride up with Durotan, the first time the character Durotan showed up, I was just, oh my gosh, there's Durotan. And so I really liked reading this book right when, you know, right when I was about to play the expansion and was able to see these main characters again in the game.
Yeah, me too. It really enriched the experience.
Yeah, because you have background, so when you're going on a quest or doing something, you're like, oh, that's right. And I mean, there was a really funny like little dialogue that happened around the campfire, where it was Thrall and Draka and Doratan says, "You're a really good fighter, Thrall. Why don't you have a mate?" And he goes, "Well, I do, but she's at home with the little ones." And he goes, and Doratan goes, "Why would in war is the time you need your family around you?" And it's like, whoa, you don't know who you're saying that to. So I really like that.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to close up now. So we're just going to click through the rest of these things. So we are going to post this in the Google community. We're going to post, is Doratan a hero? So that you guys can go ahead and please write something about it, or I don't care. You know, make a little video, whatever you guys want to do. And while we're saying, is Doratan a hero, we're also saying, we are going to say, is Vaelin a hero? And we're pretty much going to be closing up there. But also, if you were teaching this in your classroom, what would you emphasize in this week's readings? So that was basically our parting thoughts. Some other things are legacies, what stays after the journey is done. And Sherry Jones will be doing the gamification and game-based learning hangout for us on Sunday, closing up that track. And then we are planning on coming back in the spring with the multi-player classroom, and also the summer, the Art of Game Design, a book of lenses. So I just wanted to thank everybody and for watching and participating. And while this is our last thing, we're going to go ahead and say goodbye.
Okay. Thank you and
Bye,
goodbye.
everybody.
It was a great conversation, as always.
Bye.